Islamic laws of inheritance. I am doing an introduction to this science, and I project it to be maybe 4 parts, inshallah. So I want to recap because I missed last month. I want to recap just to refresh our minds, make sure we're on the same page and we have that recollection of what we did so far. And then I'll speak about in today's session about arkanul earth, right? The sort of pillars of Islamic inheritance, the asbab, which is like the factors. What are the factors that cause inheritance to occur? The shurut of inheritance, that like the conditions that have to be met or prerequisites, if you will. And I'll finish with the mawani al-earth, which are the prohibitive factors. There's some things that can happen in a family situation or social situation that mitigates or prohibits one from inheriting wealth, inshallah. So let me just recap. So I began by, making a distinction between the Islamic last will and testament from Islamic laws of inheritance proper. There's an interconnection because it involves wealth, right? So both domains, both subjects connect at the point of wealth and the inheritance of that wealth. But they're separate categories too, because the will focuses more on funeral instructions and a discretion that Islamic law gives one to pass with 1/3 of the wealth. The other 2/3 of the wealth becomes the new whole, and the Islamic laws of inheritance kick in and governs that. So there's an interconnection, but at the same time, they're two separate categories that connect at the point of wealth. The Islamic inheritance proper has to do with when someone dies. That's when it kicks in, right? If someone has to die and the wealth that he or she leaves behind has to be inherited. And the Quran has laid down very clear instructions. And the last time I had pointed out those ayat, I can repeat it, not go into the contents of the ayat, but just like the surah and ayat number, as well as hadith. It is very substantive. At the same time, there are some issues of inheritance that comes up where we don't have a clear Quranic ayah or authentic hadith, and it becomes a matter of ijtihad. That was the case in the time of the companions, and the fiqh, the Islamic jurisprudence works have recorded many of the ijtihad and judgments the companions came to because they didn't have that clear, direct response in the Quran or the Hadith. And there's as well a lot of hypotheticals and speculative reasoning and so on to arrive at judgment and guidance concerning matters of inheritance that the Quran or Hadith may not be clear on. So all that is part of the law and the genre of Islamic inheritance. So I also stress the importance of it that, when you study the hadith on Islamic inheritance, the Prophet called it in one hadith, right? Half of knowledge, right? And it is one of the first of the Islamic sciences and knowledge that would disappear. Not because the ulama are not around, the Islamic scholars or the books of Islamic knowledge are not available, is that people become careless, they become forgetful, or perhaps people, members of the Ummah, the community, are just ignorant of it. And these laws of inheritance, they bypass, they overlook. They don't deal with it. They don't go to it to implement when it comes to beathing. So there's quite a number of hadiths that stress the importance, the virtues of this very, very important Islamic sciences. Some of the ayah, just to refresh our minds, Surah 4, Surah Nisa, ayah 11 to 12. Again, it picks it up in ayah 14, 176. And then we jump to Surah Al-Anfal, 75. You also have verse 33, ayah 6. All these are the ayat of the Quran that speaks very clearly on the subject of inheritance. And some of the hadith that I mentioned, and then I'll go into the new sections today. This is just by recap and review and just keep our minds fresh on the topic. The Prophet said in one hadith, the daughter gets half, and then the granddaughter gets a sixth, and whatever remains goes for the sister. So this is he's speaking to a situation, an inheritance situation, where the surviving inheritors, females, you have a daughter, you have a granddaughter, and you have a sister. And you can see how he introduced and how he made judgment on the fractional distribution of inheritance. And my last session, I'll pick that up in more detail because there's specific inheritors, male and female, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allotted a certain fraction. That's contained in Quran, that's in hadith. So in this hadith, we see that the daughter gets half, the granddaughter gets 1/6, and the rest goes to the sister. In another hadith, he mentioned that the maternal uncle inheritor when there's no other inheritor. And I'll elaborate more on this to show that when we don't find the rightful inheritors, because in a particular family tree, right, those inheritors are sort of non-existent, you have to go further out in the family branch. The paternal uncle gets preference, but if he's not there, then you go to the maternal uncle. And here we can see in this hadith, the Prophet including him. So when we exhaust the immediate family relatives and we don't find any of them being around because they themselves passed away or they just don't exist in that family tree, we have to go further out and see who are the other relatives that the deceased person has, and we include them in the equation. We calculate their fractional result. I will prepare this presentation. I'll give it to Brother Imtiaz. Anyone who reaches out to me, so you have a reference to go by if you want to review all his hadith and remember all the ayat and so on. I'll make that available at the end of my series on Islamic inheritance. Okay, so that was just by way of recap. So I want to start off. There's several sections here. They're very straightforward. I didn't really need to project it on a screen for everyone to see. So I'll just narrate and expound and explain as I go along. So let's look at the arcanal earth. These are called like the pillars of inheritance. Everything has its pillars. Islam itself has its major pillars, right? The Shahada, the Zakat, the Hajj, and so on and so forth. So inheritance as well has its pillars. It's what it stands on, what it's based on. And there are three pillars of inheritance. Number one is the Muwarith, or that's the one who bequeaths the wealth. That's the one who has died and has left wealth behind to be inherited. Then you have the second pillar is the Warith. The Warith is the one that inherits, the inheritor. And then you have the thing that's inherited. That's called the Mawruth. The Mawruth is the actual inheritance, the breakdown of the wealth and property and assets and so on, or you just liquefy to a number that is going to be fractionally distributed to the rightful inheritors. Right, so those are the pillars of inheritance, right? The one who leaves behind the inheritance, again, the muwarith. The one who inherits the inherited, that's the warith. And the thing that's inherited, right? That's the mawruth. So that's very simple to understand. It's not complicated, but we need to understand all of these preliminary um, issues and people and connections before we get to the actual solving of an inheritance problem. So I'm going to move on now to the factors of Islamic inheritance. That's like the asbab, right? The asbab al-irth. And number one, it has to do with uh, nasab. Nasab is like a blood relation, right? So what are the means by which someone inherited? Well, it has to be family ties, right? Blood relation. Nasab covers um, all of that. And when we are doing, when we're solving an inheritance a problem, you start with the immediate family. As I said, we go up, right? We go up. That's called usul. You go up to see if there's a father, if there's a grandfather, if there's a great grandfather, and similarly, a mother, a grandmother, a great grandmother. We go all the way up. We also go laterally, right? So that would bring like the siblings, the half brother, the aunts and uncles, nephews, and all of that. And then we go down. Go down would be like the progeny, right? Son, daughter, grandson, granddaughter, great grand, and so on, all the way down. So all of them have a nexus of Nasa red blood relation, right? So that's one of the reason, right? The factors, that's one of the suburb, right? The cause for inheritance, right? That has to be in place. Stranger can't come and inherit a Muslim wealth because that person doesn't have a what? A family connection, a family tie, a blood relation with the deceased. But he has no legitimate claim, he or she, on that person's wealth. The other suburb, the other reason, the other factor that can cause someone to inherit wealth from another person is not blood ties, but marriage, right? Husband and wife don't have blood ties between them, but they come together to form a family by marriage. So a wife can inherit from a husband and vice versa. A husband can inherit from his wife, not because of blood relation, but because of marital, that legal um, bond that they have between the two of them. So you have blood relation, nasab, and you have nikah. These are some of the factors, the reasons for inheritance being bequeathed and inherited, and so on. And then the third factor or the third suburb, I want to mention it here for the sake of knowledge, but it's not extant anymore, meaning that we don't find it in our societies, but it was present in the 17th century and later on until Islam completely abolished slavery. And it has to do with a slave, not that a slave can inherit, right? Remember, 7th century Arabia was in many respects a slave society. Not that everyone owned slave, but some of the Arabs did, some of the Quraysh did. The Prophet himself never had slaves. And he took, if I can digress a bit, he took an incremental egalitarian approach to abolishing slavery from Islam. He did it quite differently with alcohol. Alcohol was progressively prohibited. There was a moral suasion in the Quran dissuading Muslims. The harms is greater than the good. And then, so it built up a resentment, a distaste for alcohol. And then in Medina, the prohibition came, right? The last 10 years of the Prophet's life were Allah headed to the handiwork of the devil and so on. And alcohol industry, alcohol consumption was abolished in Islamic society in the time of the Prophet, Allah Islam, but not so with slavery. There's a whole regime of injunctions that the Prophet ﷺ introduced. It's found in Quran. It's in Sunnah that it took an incremental, egalitarian approach. But bottom line is that slaves were wrong, and Muslims had them and were freeing them, and it was part of the Arabian society. So it is not that a slave can inherit, but a slave can inherit if he is freed. So the way it works is like this is called wala. And the precedent for it is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ narrated by Ibn Abbas when he said, أن رجلا مات على عهد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ولم يترك وارثا إلا عبدا وهو أعتقه فأعطاه ميراثه. This is an authentic hadith found in Bukhari and Muslim and Ibn Majah and others, in which Ibn Abbas, well, pleased with him, reported that there was a man in the community, in the Muslim community, he died, and he did not leave behind any inheritor, meaning that there was no family member, absolutely no family member, not going up, father, grandfather, not going across, no siblings, and going down, no one, no children, all right? But he did have a slave. And what the Prophet ﷺ did is that he freed the slave. So the slave was now a freed man, and he gave him all the wealth. He gave it to him as inheritance. So because that occurred, it's a hadith. It became a part of Islamic law. So we discuss it when we talk about Islamic inheritance by way of disseminating knowledge, not that we have actual situation in our modern society that requires that. But it is there, and it's good to know about it. So again, these are the three factors, the three asbab, the three reasons that can exist. Let's focus more on the two, because slavery is no longer with us. I mean, we have a different kind of modern slavery, right? Human trafficking and all of that, but slavery proper, as we know it from history, is where you own someone as chattel, right? And they work for you, and all the evils of that. Islam came to abolish that, and it's no longer in our society, I believe. It may still exist in some Muslim cultures around the world, but it's wrong, it's sinful, and Muslims should not be indulgent in that. So our focus is mainly for session is the blood relation and the marital tie. So those are the two factors we're going to look at, the two reasons that can cause someone to inherit. So we did the pillars of inheritance, the factors, and the third segment now is the shurut, right? The prerequisites, conditions for Islamic inheritance. Certain things have to happen, right? They're not necessarily a reason, like for an analogy, we can only pray salat although when the reason, the cause for it, manifests itself, right? That's when the sun moves away from the zenith. You can't pray salat although, right? Before that, right? Agreed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, that's and similar with Maghrib, right? You can't pray Maghrib before it's time because Maghrib is a sunset prayer. So the sabab, the cause for the Maghrib prayer is the Ghurub al-Sham, the setting of the sun. So you can't pray Maghrib before that time. So you have to wait for the causative factors to come into being, right? Before you can attain that objective or access that prayer or do that, the analogy that I'm using. Also, the sun can move away from the zenith, the zawal. The sun can set, so the reasons are there. You have to pray now that the time has come in, right? The sabab, the factor for prayer. But if you don't have wudu, can you pray?
No, it shouldn't be.
Well, exactly, right? So sometimes the reason can be there. So you can have the reason for inheritance, but someone still can inherit because, um, like for Salah, right? You have to be in wudu. You have to make ghusl. You have to make tayammum. You got to fulfill certain you got to be in a state of tahara in a nutshell. So even though the cause is there to pray Salatul Dhuhr or Fajr or Maghrib or Isha, because the time has come in, someone can't pray yet unless he or she puts themselves in tahara. Make sense? So that's the difference between factors and prerequisites. So they're not the same thing. So we should not conflate them or um, confuse them. So I just use that by way of explanation through the analogy of. So what are the prerequisites? What are the shurut of Islamic inheritance? So the way the scholars have discussed it, there are like three of them. So each of these sections have like three. So the first prerequisite, the first short condition that has to be met is like the tahqiq al-mawth. That means we have to verify the death of the person, right? You can't operate in ambiguity, right? Or hearsay. Oh, this person dies, so someone comes to me, they go to a sheikh, they go to an alim, and they said, oh, my wife died, so I want to do the inheritance. I don't know how, but I hear Islam talk about inheritance, and I want to obey Allah, and we have to verify the death of his wife. We don't know, right? As I say, in our culture, Western culture, as it says, you trust, but you verify, right? Yeah, I'm not dismissing you, but you know what? I want some proof, right? So how do we verify someone's death? All right. So even before we start calculating and asking question, what does your family tree look like? Who do we have going up, going across, going down? We want proof. Where's your affidavit? Where are the witnesses? Where is the death certificate from the coroner's office? All right. So we want to be on solid grounds before we proceed to calculate and lay out for that person, the inheritor, or the one who is claiming to be a rightful inheritor, um, a portion that well allocated to the fractional breakdown. We want proof of that the person has died. So it can come by witness. It can come by maybe a notarized statement. That's a legal document. It's notarized in America. Or we want to see a death certificate. So, okay, good. Death is confirmed. Good, alhamdulillah. The other thing is we want to verify the inheritor, right? Suppose I don't know the person, right? And he brings a death certificate. He said, this is the wife death certificate. I don't know. That could be another sister in the community, maybe not his wife. So I want to verify who the inheritor is, right? So I'll say, your marriage certificate, I want to know the connect, right? The nasab, right? The marital ties between you and the deceased person that you're claiming is your wife or husband, as the case. That's by way of example. So we want to verify the bona fides of the inheritor, just as we want to verify and certify that the person. So number one, verification of the person's death, birth certificate, affidavit, sworn affidavit, or what did I say? Eyewitness, right? I saw I was there in the hospital, Jamaica Hospital. I saw when the person died. All right, that could be good enough, right? So I don't need the death certificate. I have enough eyewitness report that tells me that the person passed away. So who do you have in your family? And then we can proceed from there. Then the second one, as I said, is the verification of the inheritor bona fides. I want to know who he is. Are you really a rightful inheritor? Right, and in civil law, to do the same thing, right? For those of you who have to probate estates and get letters of administration from the court, it's a long, lengthy process you have to go through before the court verify, certify, and make judgment and give you letters of administration, right? Because they want to make sure that it's going to the right person to inherit that estate. So Islamic law has the same thing, and I would say Islamic law predates Western law in that. And the third one is a prerequisite we're talking about is knowledge, right? You Maghrib time could come in by way of analogy. Um, the person could be in wudu, and guess what? He may not know how to pray, right? He just imitates someone in the washroom, wiping their head, washing their hands and feet, and so on. But he don't know how to make salah. He's a new convert, right? So, of course, that's a no-brainer. You have to have knowledge of Islamic laws of inheritance. It is not a man-made science. It is there in the Quran. It is there in the Hadith. Not everyone knows it. Not everyone can unpack it. Not everyone can expound on it. It's the same thing with tafsir and fiqh and so many of the Islamic sciences. You have to have some people in the community, the ulama, who have mastery over these sciences so that they can guide the community along the lines of Sharia and in accordance with Quran and Sunnah. All right, so these are the three prerequisites. So we did the causative factors, we did the pillars, we did the prerequisites. The last one I want to touch on for today, inshallah. This is going to be a short session, but very important. There's not so much about how long the session is, right? This is what we actually we discuss and unpack and can bring clarity to the subject matter. So this one is the mawanin wal if, right? These are the prohibitive factors of inheritance. All right, so keep in mind all that we have discussed today, inshallah, in this session. We still need to know what are the mitigating factors, because sometimes you can have all the other things in place, right? The reasons for inheritance, the pillars are there, the prerequisites seems to have been met, but you know what? There are some mitigating factors nonetheless. All right. By way of an analogy, someone could meet the prerequisite of salah in wudu. The reason for that prayer is there. The sun has set, for example. But the person has belief, he or she is dressed properly, but guess what? There's a mitigating factor. They can't find a musalla. Walking the streets, time has come in, they're looking for a masjid, they're looking for a place to roll out the musalla, they can't find it. So there's a mitigating factor, right? There's something that's preventing you, even though the other things are in place that we talked about from inheriting, there can be some mitigating factors that we have to look at before we do the calculation inheritance for a family or for one of the inheritors. So what are these prohibitions? What are these prohibitive factors? Number one, I'm going to mention, but again, this is no longer extant, occurring in the Ummah, in Muslim countries. I believe it's Ubudiyya, right? Slavehood, right? Islam has abolished that. Right. So, but I mentioned it here. That was one that you do any study of the fiqh works on inheritance, you will see lengthy discussions on that by all the mazahib. It's part of the law of Islamic literature on Islamic jurisprudence, right, that speak to inheritance. So number one is slavery, slavehood. Someone being in slavery cannot inherit, cannot bequeath wealth because that person is owned by someone else. So you get the idea behind it. So not much to say on that. The second one is very important. They all are. The second prohibitive factor is killing, and killing someone, right? Killing someone can be by murder, it can be by manslaughter, right? And the Prophet was very clear when he said, "Laysa lil qatil min al mirath shay," that the one who kills, he has no inheritance, meaning that he can't inherit from the person that he killed. All right. So that goes to murder, that intentional killing. What, you kill a person to get a wealth, right? No, you brother, is ruled out for you, get nothing. Or sometime there's an altercation, right? They're fighting, they're arguing, get heated, they lose their temper. You know, shaitan is the midst of everything. Uh, Anger goes to the head, and somebody kills somebody. Didn't mean to. So that's not like murder, but that's like manslaughter. You still took a life, all right? Um, no, you can't get inheritance, right? All that murkies the water of inheritance, right? Because we can't know what's in the person's mind, and you just took this person's life, and now you come to find if you're going to get half or one third or one eighth of the inheritance of this person, right? So these are mitigating factors, and there's one. I mean, there are there are few exceptions. It has no relevancy to our community, but some of the exceptions are like qisas, right? You know, Islam has a thing called qisas in the context of an Islamic state, right? Like, uh, someone kills a member of your family, and the perpetrator is caught, convicted, and so on. The judge will give you the right of qisas, so you can kill that person, right? Took his life. It's all retaliation, the law of retaliation, right? It's been around, Roman Empire. Islam endorsed this and incorporated part of Islamic law, right? Law of retaliation, qisas, is enshrined in Islamic law. We are Muslim minority. We don't deal with that aspect of Islam. Islam also has pardon, right? And blood money, right? So sometimes, and this is how Islam amplified the previous Sharia. This is not found in the Torah or the Gospel, right? Qisas is there, law of retaliation, eye for an eye, for tooth, and so on. All right, that Thoracic law. Islam has it, but Islam added it, augmented it, amplified it. So Islam has the blood money. So instead of qisas, right, you can say blood money. I'm not going to kill you for killing my brother, right? I don't have the guts to do it. I have a different sort of constitution. So I'll take the other option that the Sharia gives me. I want $500,000. Pay me blood money. Yeah, that's what my brother's life cost. So Islam's allow dia. And there's a third mechanism that Islamic law has that previous revelation didn't have. That was af, right? That's from the many ayat of the Quran. You can just forgive, right? Forgive and forget. Let bygones be bygones. I'm not demanding qisas, which is my right. I'm not demanding dia, blood money, which is my right. I have chosen to forgive. Oh, right? That was not found in previous Sharia. So this is one of the exception, right? So you're not. It's not like you had an altercation, or you just have a murderous mindset. You're taking a life because the law requires that, right? It's qisas. So that's different, right? So if it's that situation and the person that you apply the qisas to happen to be a relative, you theoretically can inherit from that person because you took his life under a legitimate situation, right? The law upholds that. Others is like buggy, so all of it is very complicated. As I said, it has no um, relevance to our time, but one of it does, right? So I'm just having a theoretical discussion here on the difa and buggy is like people who try to disturb the social order, and you may have to execute them because you're part of the state apparatus, law enforcement, and so on. But one person who you happen to put down is a relative. Yeah, you can inherit them because you're acting on the state instructions. So all that doesn't concern it, but it's part of the Islamic jurisprudence. But there's one of it that has relevancy, and that's if you, I don't know, maybe your relative just lost his mind, and he accosted you, and there was a imminent death threat to you if you didn't defend yourself. But in defending yourself, so this is self-defense. So in defending, he wrongfully accused you of something, and you said, I had nothing to do with it. He said, no, you were the perpetrator. Everybody tell me it's you. And he lost his mind. And then he attacks you, and you defend yourself. So that's self-defense. So if you happen to kill him through self-defense, right, and you can prove that to the Islamic authorities that this was not manslaughter, this was not murder, this was a self-defense act. Maybe they were eyewitnesses. All right, but you get the point, right? If it's a self-defense, this is only an exception where uh, the killer can inherit from the Qatil Yarith al-Maqtul, right? In this situation called self-defense, right? So in a nutshell, murder and manslaughter, as I said, all the other factors can be there, the pillars, right? The causative factors for inheritance, the prerequisite, the conditions that they met. But guess what? Lo and behold, we discover a mitigating factor. There was murder, there was manslaughter. The killer had taken the life of that person that he's now trying to inherit his wealth. And then the last one here is different religions, right? So all these other things can be placed, but another mitigating factor that can come up among relatives and family. And I think we face this particularly so in the West, right? Where we have families, not everybody's Muslim, right? Some families are, alhamdulillah, but there's some families because of conversion or some people just, you know, abandoning the Islam, they become Christian, they become Hindu, they left the fold of Islam. So now you have, but they didn't stop being your aunt or your uncle, all right, or your father, whoever he or she might be in the family tree. So you have now a clash of different religions in the family. That becomes a mitigating factor. Inheritance can't take place because the Prophet ﷺ was very clear again when he said, La yarithul al-Muslim al-kafir, wa la al-kafir al-Muslim, which means that the Muslim does not inherit from the non-Muslim, the disbeliever. And the disbeliever, so it goes both ways. The disbeliever does not inherit from the Muslim. So this can become, let's be real. This is not just hypothetical, right? This is probably happening, and it will happen because of, as I said, conversion or people just leaving the fold of Islam, right? They got sidetracked. They obeyed Shaitan, they left Islam, thinking that, Christianity serves them better. And now, the person dies, and suddenly the sister is back in the picture, or the spouse, or the brother or sister, whoever the family member is, and they're claiming their share of inheritance. Nope, no can do. All right, because of the difference of religion becomes a mitigating factor. I have dealt with cases like this. I may have mentioned it before. I had a family, I knew a family where, so this sister was divorced. She had a daughter, and then she remarried. They were Hindus, so they converted to Islam, married Muslim, and they became Muslim, but the son and the other daughter, the mother, right, remain Hindus. So he lived with his new wife and the daughter. They lived separate because the other son and daughter were married, right, had their own lives and lived separately and so on. So this question came up, and I told him, I said, no, you got to figure out what you're going to do, because your wife's son and daughter may want to claim the property, for example, whatever wealth you leave behind. So how I solved that problem is I didn't make it an inheritance problem, because remember, inheritance only kicks in when the person dies, right? Islam is very clear on that. The will, as I said, that's why I started off at the beginning, making a distinction between the will and the laws of inheritance, right? And of course, the interconnection to that have. So the way I solved it, and this is the advice that I've been given, I said, look, why leave it to be an inheritance problem? And it's going to be very thorny. It's going to be very controversial. It will be litigated. Brother and sister will go to court, right? They will sue each other to get their hands on that property and assets. This is real. I know many Muslim families who are in court. As I said, made Hajj, they do all the Ramadan, they do all the pillars of Islam. But when it comes to property that mama and papa left behind, they forget these ayat of the Quran. And it causes enmity, bitterness, breaking of family ties. Brother has sister in court, vice versa. Over what? Over material that when they die, everybody's going to leave here and go 6 feet down under. And the same property that they litigated is going to remain here above them. So these are real issues. So the way I solved this problem, I didn't make it an inheritance problem. I said, give the house away. The house that you're living on, you built it, that's your home. Give it to your daughter who's practicing Islam now. And let your wife's son, they already have the house and land. Let them know that I have given the property to her. And if they followed my advice, and that couple died, the father and mother died, but the daughter is still around. She's old now in the 70s. There's no issue with the property. Her brother and sister, non-Muslim, are clear that father had given her that. The mom was okay. But I mean, that's how we kind of walk through some of these problems, because we're trying to stay faithful and obedient, right, to the hadith. A Muslim cannot inherit from a kafir cannot inherit from a Muslim. Now it becomes even more complicated, and I'm just advising because I don't really know how to solve it. Sometimes you have some people who accept Islam, and then the father and mother remain Christians or non-believers, but they bequeathed wealth to them, right? And in America, you know how hard it is to make a living here, right? So much people are just barely eking out a livelihood, living paycheck to paycheck. It's tough. It's tough to live comfortably here in America, unless you're rich. So what do you tell such a person who has accepted Islam now? He's struggling, he or she's struggling. And they know that the non-Muslim father or mother or brother, whoever it is, has bequeathed them. What do you tell them? You can't take that wealth? I mean, the hadith is very clear. This is a big challenge. And I have to do more research and see what some of the fatwa on it, what other scholars are saying. But this is a tough one. I don't know what you all think about this one. What do you tell a person? The Prophet is very clear, you can't inherit, but then who pays that person bills? Who helps that person complete his or her education and rent and other expenses just to keep a roof over their head and not become homeless here in America? Do you accept that wealth or not? And if you say yes, I haven't dealt with this problem, but I know it exists. No one has really come to me and brought that step, but our Sharia has some flexibility. It's not that you're trying to walk around the hadith, right? But there's some flexibility where it becomes a question of necessity, darura, right? Because a darura tubihu al-ma'thurat, right? Necessity sets aside the prohibition. If you're dying and the only thing that can save you is a gulp of wine or morsel of pork, you have to eat it to survive, right? Islam is very clear on the principle of necessity. And we will have to see if social necessity applies to this individual, because some of the what do they call it? The necessities of life is what? Food, shelter, and clothing, right? We want to look into that from the maqasid point of view of Sharia, right? The Sharia deals with certain maqasid, there's certain objectives that have to be met. And this is all Sharia laws relate to one of these five objectives, right? Preservation of life, preservation of religion, preservation of intellect, preservation of wealth, preservation of progeny. And we have to see if we can make a case based on the maqasid of Sharia and say, yes, take that while because this is a matter of preservation of life. It's a matter of ijtihad. And these issues that come up, we will have to resolve it through ijtihad rather than a blanketed statement, because many of the hadith have to be, it's based on context. Everything in Islam that is a command or prohibition is based on context, is based on circumstances, is based on ability. La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha. All right, so I wanted to digress a bit and just flesh that out to show you that these things that we discussed, some of it is hypothetical and theoretical and speculative, but some are very, very real, and they pose some exceptional challenges for a Muslim. This is one of them. And just to buttress it, there's another hadith, just to reinforce the point, where the Prophet said, La yatawarathu ahlu millatayn. Just underscores, right, that people of two different religions cannot inherit from each other. Basically saying the same thing, but in other words. So we have a number of hadith on that. All right, so the final section here, I just want to go through a list of what the main inheritor. I'm going to break it down by gender, right? And then just summarize everything again so that we know what we covered today. And if we have a Q&A, inshallah, we'll take that at the end before I close. So we have about 10 minutes. So this list of inheritors broken down by gender, keep in mind it's not exhaustive, but it kind of take how to put it, not hierarchical, but it takes sort of priority in terms of who they are, if that makes sense, right? But as I said, sometimes they may not be available, right? Because everybody's family tree is different. So we have to go wider. We have to search wider for the relatives of that deceased. As I mentioned the hadith at the beginning, there was one guy who, he died in the community in Medina, and they're looking around for inheritance. I mean, who is this guy family, right? And all they found was a maternal, a khal. A khal is like a maternal uncle, all right? He's not mentioned in this list, but that's the only relative that the person had. And the Prophet gave the inheritance to the khal, the maternal uncle. All right, so keep in mind that this list I mentioned is this kind of take priority when we look into the family and seeing who among them the rightful inheritance and what sort of priority they're going to take. Because, for example, the son will take priority, or he precludes the grandson. That's how it works, right? But that's why if you know the laws of inheritance and your family situation members, you're going to leave behind a son and a grandson. Well, know that the grandson is not going to get anything. The son is going to take all. So you want to cater for the grandson through the wasiyah, right? That 1/3 that we talked about so many sessions ago. You kind of want to apportion that 1/3 or some of that 1/3, all right, to that grandson, if that makes sense. Let me go through the list broken down by gender. Let's look at the male list first. So someone dies, they're left behind, right? People, right? Family members. If there's a son, the son is a rightful inheritor. Then next in line will be the grandson. And in the grandson here, when it, the Islamic Arabic terms are very precise, right? It says Ibnul Ibn, so it's not just grandson, but it's the son of the son, meaning not the son of the daughter, right? Because you could have a grandson through your daughter, you could have a grandson through your son. So it is your grandson through his son. He is high up on the list as a rightful inheritor. Not that your grandson through your daughter can't inherit, but he takes precedence. Who? The Ibnul Ibn, the son of your son, right? Or your grandson through your son. Then you have the father. Then you have the paternal grandfather. Paternal grandfather is the grandfather on the father's side. Then you have your brother, that's like your blood brother, right? I think we say blood brother. Right? You share the same parents. And then we have the paternal half brother. So you share half brother is different to step brother, right? Step brother is when like you have a sister, let's for example, she's divorced or she's widowed, and she has a son, and she remarries, and the person she marries has a son. So the new husband now comes into the family with his son. So those sons are the stepson, right? Or that's my the son, that's my stepbrother, because you don't share a common parent. So of course, we all know this, right? Half brother and step, they're different. Mm-hmm. So your paternal half brother and your maternal half brother, then we go to nephews, right? The son of brother from both parents, and nephew again, the son of the brother from the father only. Then we have the paternal uncles, and then we have the husband. I had free slave here in my notes, but as I said, it's not historically relevant. That's what the kind of the main male list of inheritors look like, broken down by gender. Now the female side of it, right? We have the daughter, and we have the son's daughter, which is the granddaughter, but through the son. We have the mother, we have the maternal grandmother, we have the paternal grandmother, we have the blood sister, we have the maternal half sister, paternal half sister, we have the wife, we also have the freed female slave. So these are like the main. Remember, as I said, it doesn't exhaust, because sometimes in a family situation, some of these people on the list here are not available, they don't exist, and you have to widen your search for the deceased relatives that are available, that are still alive, but they're not found on this list. And then there's some general rules that we follow. So this is a lot for today, although they are not very lengthy, but I'll just recap, summarize what we did to keep us on point. And I think next week, inshallah, what I'm going to do, that session, just to give you a heads up, how we're unfolding this series on Islamic inheritance. The 1/3 and the 1/8, right, that is mentioned in the Quran, the fractional reserves, right? Not everybody gets the same thing. So that'll be very, very interesting. Who in the Quran, who that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has identified that should get half, or should get 2/3, or should get a quarter, who should get 1/8, who should get 1/6. I'm going to break down that list so that we see who they are. And that list is one of the most handy lists that we can have in solving inheritance problems. So some people get by specific, they get inheritance, that is, by specific fractional allotments found in the Quran, found in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Other people inherit not by fractional reserves, but when these people that have the fractional reserve get their portion, whatever is remain, it's called the baki. Whatever is remain, that is a portion to them, because they are a rightful inheritor, but they were not allotted a specific portion, a 1/6, a 1/3, a 1/8, as suitors as the case might be. So we're still dividing that whole. So what remains from that whole After we solve this fraction, we will give it to that person. So that's called inheritance by taqsim. And the other type of inheritance by specific fractional allotments is inheritance by furud, right? So that's what's coming up next week. So I want to finish here with some general comments on this list broken down by gender of what Islam considers rightful inheritors. So when you have like the list that I mentioned, you have male inheritors converging, right? So you look at the family and you see, wow, I see plenty male inheritors here, right? So there's a convergence, right? Some precluding takes place, some prioritizing takes place. We can't break up that whole into fractions to give all the male inheritance. It doesn't work like that. We have to give priority. So now it takes a kind of hierarchical format. So when you have many male inheritors from that list converging, competing for that inheritance, only the son, the father, and the husband will inherit. They preclude everybody else. So we don't even have to know who the uncles are, who the nephews are, and so on and so forth, right? We stick because of that conversion of male inheritors. We are only going to consider the son, father, and the husband. Everybody else gets list of male inheritors because of conversions. Similarly with the female, if a family situation, we're solving the inheritance for them, and we see a number of female inheritors converging among the list that I mentioned. The thing is, only 5 of them are going to inherit, right? So we're going to knock some of them off the list, and we're going to prioritize. All this is in accordance with Islamic law. These are how judgments are made. So there's nothing here that we're inventing or innovating. This is a science that's been handed down from the 7th century. As I said, some issues require speculative ijtihad and so on. But I'm just dealing with the basic and the fundamentals, right? That is the hypothetical and the issues of ijtihad. It's part of the scholarly discourse, and scholars are trained in it if they've studied that science. I'm trying to keep it simple, inshallah. So yeah, let's go back to that. So you have female inheritors converging. So there's competition. There's too many of them to divide that whole, right? So we're going to focus only on 5 of them, and that will be the daughter, the granddaughter, and when we talk about granddaughter, it means the son's daughter, the mother, the blood sister, and the wife, right? The spouse. We're going to prioritize them over the others. The others don't get anything, but as I said, on the wasiyah, if you know the laws of inheritance, you can say the 1/3. I'm going to break it down to those other female members who are not able to get from the allotment. That's how we can work it. Now, when you have, let's make the list now, right? Let's mix it. So now you have a conversion of male and female inheritors. They're all family members. There's a lot of them. Who gets priority now? All of them cannot get a portion of the inheritance. Too many of them. So Islamic law says that 5 of them will inherit. So the mother and father must be in the equation. Mother and father, that's 2. I said 5. The other pair that must be in the equation too is the son and the daughter. So mother and father, son and daughter, if you have a mixed list, and these are the male and female inheritors converging. And the 5th one is either the wife or the husband. There's only 5. So it has to be one of the 2. Now, another general comment here from this list that's generated that breaks down by gender, main inheritors. Now, if you have a male or female relative that is not among official lists, it doesn't mean that they can't get inheritance. It all depends on what that family tree looks like. I said it's a fingerprint like with everyone else. Nobody has the same family. Um, we will die, and when we look at the relatives that we left behind, is different for everybody, right? So the Quran puts them in a different category because their relationship with the deceased is like still further out. It's not like immediate family members, right? The Quran calls them ulul arham. Ulul arham. That's the broader family. Yeah, the reference to that is in Surah Anfal, ayah 75, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بعد نعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أولي الأرحام بعضهم أولى ببعض في كتاب الله إن الله بكل شيء عليم. Right? That the ulul arham, those people beyond the immediate relatives. That was like the paternal uncle and son, right? The father. They are, they're like associates one to another. أولى بعضهم ببعض بالله. Means that they have a right to over each other. إن الله بكل شيء alim. Allah has knowledge over everything. So those other inheritors that are like not on the main list here, they're considered ulul arham because it's still part of that distant family tree, not immediate, like sort of extended family. I think that would be the word to use, extended family. So, but there's a methodology how we go about sifting out the rightful inheritors, because obviously everybody can share in the pie, right? The pie can only be split with a number of ways, and there's too many people come with it. So now we have to have a hierarchical prioritization among male and female inheritors, and Islamic law covers all of that. So that's it for today. It's 9 o'clock. So what did we look at? We looked at the arkan, right? The arkan of inheritance, right? The person who is bequeathing the wealth, right? That's the one who dies and leaving wealth behind. The inheritor, and then the inheritance, right? Those are the three pillars of inheritance, arkan. Then we had, just summing up, we had the asbab of earth, right? That's the blood relation, that's the factors, the things that cause inheritance to occur. It could be by blood relation, that's like between a husband and wife, not relatives to each other. They came together because of marriage. And then you have marital ties, right? Father and mother going up, siblings, progeny. And so we did talk about wala, which is slave, but as I said, we don't need to concern ourselves much about that. Then we moved on to the prerequisites of condition. And this is the verification process, right? You want to make sure that that person is dead. We want to hear from the eyewitnesses. We want to see a signed affidavit, a sworn affidavit. We want to see a death certificate, as the case may be. We also want to verify the inheritors, the one who is claiming to be an inheritor, his or her bona fides. What exactly is the relationship with this deceased, right? Do you have a marriage certificate? Who can we need confirmation? And the third one, the third prerequisite is knowledge, right? Ma'rifatul irth, knowledge of the laws of inheritance. So we know we're doing the right thing. This is how the guidance has come down to us. Then we went on to the prohibitive factors, the mawani al-irth. That's slavery. Don't need to concern yourself with that. And then we talk about killing, right? In a family, amongst a family, you had a killing. One person kill another one by murder or is manslaughter. That person doesn't have a rightful claim anymore, right, to the inheritance of that person because of being a causation of death, unless he or she can prove self-defense. And among the prohibitive factors, again, is difference in religion, right? The Muslim cannot inherit from a non-Muslim, and non-Muslim can inherit from versa. And then I concluded with the list, the list of main inheritors broken down by gender and sort of general comments that guide us on that. So next week, inshallah, as I said, we are looking at the specific fractional allotments that the Quran and Sunnah gives to certain people in the family. And that's called inheritance by furud, right? It's fard. That's what it's called, Quran and Hadith. And then the others get the remaining portion. So they're not getting it by allotment, but getting what remains of the whole when we divided it, when we divvy it up. That's called al-irth by taqsim. So that will be next session, inshallah. Wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
So, Sheikh Fiaz, for a wonderful presentation. Just a point of note that next, I think you said once per month, right?
Oh, yes.
Next month.
Right, good. Yeah. I'm good. Yeah, I can only do once a month. Thanks for the reminder.
Are you going to take any questions now, or?
Yeah, sure. I could take a few.
Yeah, I got one. If on number two, one who inherits, right? Let's say the son, right? You talk about the male, right? The son.
Yeah.
Let's say the son is missing, and they think the son died. Let's say, but down the line, like 3-4 years down the line, the son appeared. What would happen in a case like that? Would he get?
Yeah, that may happen. I don't think it's too much of a hypothetical. I'm sure in history it happened. I'm sure it can happen, and it's probably happening. So, we have to deal with reality on the ground. So the knowledge that we had at the time, right, he was non-existent, right? So we have to work with that knowledge that we have. We can't hold back the inheritance with the possibility that this guy is going to pop up somewhere. No, we have to close the case. So we have to go what we can verify, what we can certify with the knowledge that we have at hand. Make sense? Yeah, I'll give you another example, analogy. Like a sister, right? Her husband, let's say he's in the army, goes to fight, and then there's no contact, right? There's no contact with his wife. How long is that sister supposed to wait? Anyone knows? How long can she wait? She wants to move on with her life. How long?
20 days. 120 days, I guess.
Huh?
They want 20 days.
No, well, that's a number. Any other guesses or someone knows? She's called Mohiba. Mohiba is a wife who husband is missing. And she's coming to the Imam. She said, Imam, I think that's it. My husband is gone. He's been, what's the time period? These are real things that happen in Islamic history. I'll just cut to the chase. So in Umar time, the husband used to go to war. Because remember now Islam is spreading, right? It attacked the Byzantine Empire, Persian Empire, the collapse. Islam is growing fast, rapid. It's a wildfire spreading. So a lot of companions, they're at war. They're on the front lines, right? And it caused stress on the family, stress, because they were not seeing them, not hearing from them. No news is coming from the battlefield. So Umar, when he was Khalifa, right, he had a big mashura of the women in Medina. It's not like this is hadith or Quran, but he had shura, he had consultation. And the women say that they can only stay as long as 4 months. And that was Umar bin al-Khattab ruling, right? That a woman can stay 4 months. So in other words, if 4 months her husband was going to the bath, this is in Medina, this is happening in history. She was considered divorced after 4 months. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is that to relate to Faiz's question, if after 5 months, Mr. Man shows up, guess what? You lost your wife, she's gone. She has been divorced because you were away 4 months. So you can't come back now and say, I have a rightful claim to her. And this is what actually happened in Islamic history. Umar had given a time period. I don't want to say a waiting period, so we don't confuse with iddah. But he said, okay, if you're not hearing from me, your husband, and you told me in this shura, I'm the political leader, I'm in charge of the government, I have to lay down policy. Tell me how long you can wait. They said 4 months. So that was his ijtihad, that was his judgment. Not that it was based on Quran and Hadith, but that's how he had to rule his empire. And so, as I said, if husband shows up 5 months, well, hey, time elapsed and your wife moved on, you started a new life, and you have no claim like that. So it relates to the inheritance question. If later on that son pops up, hey, there's nothing we can do. We work with the knowledge and facts that we had before us, and we did the fractional distribution of the wealth. Close the case.
So he's out of it, then he's completely out of it.
Another question, one this is hypothetical, but just to bring out, say, the comprehensiveness of the deen and the analogy. When you mention about if someone is killed by a relative, then that relative can inherit from the one who he has killed.
Mm-hmm.
But let's assume now that you didn't kill the one who bequeathed the inheritance, but he killed someone close to him. Let's say his daughter or his son.
Yeah.
Would that same rule apply on him?
Yeah, very good question. It does. Yeah, because you see the family members, right? Their relatives one to another, and a death occurred, and the death occurred by one of the family killing the other family members. So it doesn't matter what part of the family tree it occurred. You kill upward, your father, your grandfather, manslaughter, intentional murder. It doesn't matter if it goes laterally, your sibling, right? Uncle and nephews and so on, or going downwards, right? If it's your son or grandson or daughter going downwards. So it doesn't matter. Once killing occurs among family members, that's a mitigating factor. It proscribes that person from here. So the only concession or exception here, right? If you go back to the discourse, it's self-defense. So that person will have to prove self-defense. And that's, I mean, it can be proven in some instances, right? If we carry out the hypothetical further, maybe there are witnesses, maybe there was a camera in the room that taped everything, and we can clearly see, yes, he was just defending, and he landed a blow, or he used whatever he had to defend himself. Unfortunately, struck the head of his relative, and he died as a result of defense. So if the Islamic Authority can see the evidence and hear the reports, whatever it is that would take to verify that situation, they will have to rule accordingly. Either it's self-defense or it's not self-defense. If it is, yes, he can inherit. If it is not, then it's like a manslaughter, or maybe it's a murder.
Another point, another question, or basically, and for a response given by the scholar, Dr. Hatim El Haj, the famous New Jersey. The question about asked about the inheritance from non-Muslim parents. So the question was, please advise me of whether corporation shares transferred to me upon the death of my dear non-Muslim mother are to be accepted as I seek to follow Islamic guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
His brief answer was, all praise be to Allah, may his blessing be on his Prophet Muhammad. The inheritance that is not permissible between Muslim and non-Muslim parents is the one forced by the law. However, the passing of property between Muslims and non-Muslim relatives is valid if it was done voluntarily, such as in bequests or upon the approval of the other heirs.
Yeah, that's so he's not treating it as inheritance proper, is he?
Right.
Yeah, that's a strange one, because that's clearly a bequeathal, and if it's a bequeathal, that's what inheritance is. And you have to contend with that hadith where it's very clear, la yarithul al muslim al kafir wa la al kafir al muslim, right? So Yeah, but what's the Islamic fiqh rule though that he's basing it on? Is he using?
You need to elaborate.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? So we have to look at all the fatwa and the sort of ijtihad the scholars this is very serious. This is serious. So and then help sit with an alim and see how we can walk through these decisions that have been taken. And it's just like when we do all these fiqh classes that we had, we looked at what Hanafi said, right? What Shafi said, what Maliki said, what Hanbali said. And but we sifted through, we navigated all these legalistic discourses to come ultimately at the one that has the ponderant view, right? The Raja, the one that has the strongest dalil based on Quran and Sunnah.